evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Andrea Lopez Herrera, and I am the Community Development Assistant with the Prince George County Office of Human Rights, the county's Civil and Human Rights Education and Enforcement Agency. Co-hosting with me today is Renee Battle Brooks, the Executive Director of the Office of Human Rights. Our agency investigates complaints of civil rights discrimination. We combat human trafficking around the region. We ensure equitable access to county government resources for all people in the language of their preference. And we educate on social justice and building understanding across diverse peoples through our outreach program. Today, we are so excited to be hosting our second annual Celebrating Latino Achievement event in honor of Hispanic Heritage Month. We are thrilled to have this opportunity to highlight some local folks who are doing incredible work around our region. Tonight, we welcome 3 people who are engaged in social justice work and community engagement in 3 different areas. Ofelia Montelongo through art, literature, and advocacy, Rain Rivera Forbes through elected civil service, and Jorge Benitez Perez through community organization. We will hear from each of our guests in turn and then bring them all on screen together for a roundtable discussion at the end. Please share any questions or comments you may have in the chat as we proceed. We want to hear from you, and we will pose your questions to our guests as we can. First, we will welcome Ofelia Montelongo. Ofelia Montelongo is a bilingual writer from Mexico. She has an MBA in strategic leadership and an MA in Latin American literature. Her work has been published in the Rumpus Latino Book Review, Los Acentos Review, and elsewhere. She currently teaches at the University of Maryland, and she is a PEN Faulkner writer in residence and a Macondista and a PEN America Emerging Voice Fellows. Welcome, Ofelia.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Andrea and Renee and everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. When I first got the invite, it's like, really, you want me to speak about my achievements? So it feels weird sometimes because one can, I don't know if this happens to anyone or not, but the imposter syndrome sometimes is like, have I done enough to receive like recognition? Should I have done enough? Should I do more? What else should I do? So it's always conflicted. And more as a writer, I don't know if any writers around that sometimes we are like, oh no, we're not good enough. No, we need like a lot of validation, unfortunately, right? And as a writer, I'm always like hiding behind my words, no. But I also things that I like to do is do a lot of creative, a lot of thank you, someone in the chat like don't have imposter syndrome. I think as a human beings, it kind of happens. It kind of happens. We cannot help it. Even if you do this like for a long time, sometimes you hesitate about yourself, right? Um, but I think I'm a writer. I'm from Mexico. And I'm from Ciudad Obregón, Sonora, Mexico, and I think I've been a writer for my whole life. But when I came to the United States, when I was in my 20s, it was when I actually started like studying writing, but unfortunately there were not classes in Spanish, so I had to start writing in English, and it was gonna not like it was for me it was a challenge, but it was more like I wonder why there's nothing in Spanish. Well, yeah, like mostly it was in English, so I had to like really try to write in this pure English that I was trying to convey, which honestly it was not my voice. But I discovered that years later on. And when I discovered like what my voice or how my voice worked, I was like, wow, my voice is not to have a perfect English. It's to actually, because I'm bilingual, because I'm Mexican and I'm never ever going to speak like someone who was born and raised in the United States. And you know what? That's okay, because it's me and this is who I am. So with that thought, I started doing workshops in different languages. By different languages, I mean Spanish, English, and Spanglish, right? That's my 3 languages, right? So I started doing that, but with the mission also to help other writers, right? And to connect with other writers and to try to do the best as I can as a person. I sometimes I again I feel that I don't do enough because I have a job, I teach in a university level and everything. So I wanted to do like more workshops and unite more the community, because the community exists. There's a lot of like organizations that they're doing amazing things in the literary work, but I'm always, and I talk to other Latinx friends who are writers as well, like we should unite, we should unite. What are the Latinx writers around? So if you're one of them and you're hearing this, yeah, let's keep uniting, right? But yeah, we have some events that we're organizing, and I don't know if I should talk about them right now or later on. You can just let me know right now.
Yeah, as you're comfortable.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we have some events at the Writer Center. I'm a board member in the Writer Center in Bethesda. And last 2 weeks ago, we did a series of writing workshops over there, and they were amazing. We have Lupita Aquino for social media for writers, Sami Miranda in poetry, Patricia Coral in nonfiction, and then we have a panel that we discuss about Latinx and publishing, about Latinx writers in the community. And it honestly was amazing. At the beginning, I was like so nervous. It's like, I hope people come, right? That was my first worry. And then when it was happening, I wasn't like really thinking about like, oh, we did it. I was just trying to like, like survive the day and to do the best I can. But after that, it's like, yes, we did our first event, which it was amazing. And then on October 14, we're gonna have a bilingual open mic. And so if you're a writer, even if you're not a writer and want to read something that you wrote, or you don't feel like a writer yet, you can come in. And so it's going to be October 14 at 7 p.m. We have some spots open, and yeah, and you can read in Spanish, in English, in Spanglish, whatever you want, right? And then we're organizing also Latinx writer mixers to get to know each other, and we are thinking about the first one doing in December, and make it like a little like posada kind of thing. So if you're Latino, or if you might know a little bit what la posada is, which is it happens during the holidays, and it's a certain party where we, like, I don't know, break a piñata, eat tamales and champurrado, pozole, and all of that. So we might do like a little mixer like that. But yeah, hopefully you stay in touch. And if I'm reaching to anyone right now, that would be amazing, because that's kind of my goal. Finish my books, because sometimes when you're like creating a lot of community, eh, creating a lot of community, or creating things for other people, sometimes you forget about yourself. So I have not finished my books yet, because I'm trying always to do, I don't know, other things. But of course, yes, join us, and hopefully, even if you don't feel like you're a writer, just come and join us, and we'll convince you. Right?
That's beautiful. What you just said about validation, I think it's so real. I think for everyone, but I do think particularly artists, right? Whichever medium, writing, or right. So maybe talk a little bit about how you work through that, or what because I think it's such a real thing for everyone. So what words of wisdom do you have when it comes to that need for validation? And if you don't get it, or if you do, kind of what does that look like in the life of an artist?
Well, I can definitely say that I'm in that stage of my writing career, that, when you're like in a movie, and then a lot of things happen to the person, like to the main protagonist, right? Or that is like, but that person has to come back and then say, yes, I can do this, and then do it all and actually succeed. I'm in that part. Like, I'm in
Okay.
in the part that I'm just trying and trying and trying and trying, because I know it's going to happen, and it's going to, because I'm going to keep fighting for it, even if it takes my whole life, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that I learned is that it takes time. So, for example, when I decided to be a writer, because it's a decision I made when I was 8 years old, I
Mm.
honestly thought it would be easy, because, oh, I'm a writer. I have a bunch of books. A lot of people write. Why not? No, I like this. I'm gonna do it, right? but I had no idea what I was saying, pretty much, because it's really hard work. And many of us, I don't know if you have heard that you should do three things in life, and I call it BS because I mean you have to do whatever you want in life, but there's a saying that you have to put a tree or plantar un árbol. You have to have a kid, and you have to write a book. And then, but honestly, is I call it BS again because you don't have to do any of those things, right? But I got stuck in the you have to write a book before you die thing, right? And and then I thought it would be easy, and I wrote my first book without even having a writing class ever, and it wasn't good. It was not good, right? So it wasn't good, and it was really hard for me to hear that, like when other people read it, right? It's not good, but I had to learn, and I had to go to school, and I had to read, and I had to practice, and the validation came from myself when I noticed that people were publishing me or were noticing my work. But it takes years. It's not something like, oh, I'm gonna write a book right now. There might be some geniuses out there that they just do it. No, but for the regular people, whatever you do, even if it's writing or if you wanna play the piano, if you wanna play the guitar, whatever you want to do is gonna take time and discipline, and it's not something that I don't know where you're gonna be good at. So that's kind of like the main thing that I have learned, and it's hard to hear, but you have to invest time and be really patient with yourself.
So did I hear you say that you were 8 when you decided you wanted to be a writer?
Oh, I did, yeah.
That's just amazing. Were there like writers in your family? Where do you think this came from?
Mm, Well, my parents are teachers. Were teachers. Right now, they don't teach anymore. They still are in that like education area. But so my home was pretty much like this, full of books,
Right.
everywhere.
Right.
And I pretty much that's how I grew up, in a house full of books, and I thought it was normal. Into one, I think it was, I don't know who was it. I don't know if it was friends, someone who was passing by my house. You can see the books from outside, and and I think it was a boy, and the boy was like, "Wow, you have so many books." It's like, really? Do people not normally have that many books? And no, it wasn't normal. No, it was not that normal to just have your home overflowing with books. And then one of the reasons I wanted to do it is because I wanted one of my books to be in my library, in our home library in Obregón.
Right.
That library doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately. But
Mm.
mm, but it was kind of like that, and to be honest, that's and I'm gonna be really dark here, if that's okay. I'm gonna go dark.
Sure.
That
Because this is a journey.
I,
Yeah.
I realized when I was 8, um, what death was. That you
Mm.
die, and so I wanted to do something meaningful in my life. So
Mm.
I was like, maybe if I write a book, I can live forever. And
That
no,
is quite an amazing thought for an 8-year-old
I
to
know.
be that aware, that sentient, you know?
Yeah, it was dark. Yeah, yeah, I promise you it was
Well,
dark.
no, but it's just it's amazing. I think at 8, you know, that would never have occurred to me. So yeah, that's pretty special. But Andrea, I don't want to take, you know, jump in.
No, I think Ophelia, what you've been sharing with us is definitely very impactful, and I'm so happy to hear more from you. So thank you for being here with us. We're gonna move on to Rain Rivera Forbes and welcome her to the platform.
Thank you, Ophelia.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Gracias.
Ophelia.
We'll
Bye.
have you back. Yeah.
Okay. Bye.
Hi,
Hi
Rain.
everyone.
Hi.
Hi,
Now we
oh, sorry.
No, you're okay. So, just to introduce Rain Rivera Forby, she is thrilled to serve as the 43rd student member of the board of the Prince George County Public Schools. An Afro Latina of Puerto Rican descent, Rain was born and raised in Prince George County and is currently a senior at Duval High School. So, welcome, Rain. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good.
All right. So I'm really excited to be here. I have so much to share just about my story in general and what made me want to join the school board. So, to start off, as it was said in the bio, I was raised here in Prince George's County, Maryland. I've been here my entire life. My family is of Puerto Rican descent, hence my last name Rivera, and my other last name Forbes. I am Afro Latina. Um, Growing up, really from a young age, I saw that student advocacy was not largely receptive for adults around us, and often the student voice just wouldn't be heard. And for me, that was something that always bothered me because I had always spoken up about what I believed was right and making sure that we were heard and that our advocacy was taken seriously. So, with going through that, I had my few ups and downs because, there's a certain way to go about advocating. And for me, it was going back and forth with my teacher about whether I was right and they were wrong. And eventually, I realized that there was a better way and another way to advocate for the student voice and making sure that we're heard. So like I said, moving up in that academic career for me, that's when I also really started to notice the differences in our national government and just representation. Often I didn't see people who looked like me, and alongside that, I wouldn't see people who looked like me in my history books as well. When I was reading about lawyers and activists, I just really wouldn't see the representation of Afro Latinas or of people from the Latinx community. And it bothered me because I wanted to model after someone who looked like me to know that I could be like them one day when I got older. And as I continued to see that, I ended up joining the Prince George's Regional Association of Student Governments, which is the regional SGA for Prince George's County. And I had the opportunity to serve my first year, freshman year, as a middle school advocate. And in doing that, I was able to meet many different students who had some of the same thought process as me and really wanted to see our representation change. Alongside that, our voice change as well. And during that time, we actually had our student member of the board elections for our first Latino student member of the board, and his name was Alvaro Serrano Ruiz. And when I saw him get elected in, it inspired so much hope for me because I was like, this is representation for us. This is someone who's able to advocate on the behalf of the Latinx community and really set forth a new generation of change. So after seeing that, I knew I wanted to run for student member of the board next. I wanted to be able to represent for the other little girls that looked like me who were Afro Latina as well. And something else to add in is that growing up, I was not taught to speak Spanish. And that caused a very big disconnect for me because I believe that I just couldn't tap into my culture that way. And I did grow up with still having Spanish dishes. Like from my culture, specifically in Puerto Rico, we have arroz con pollo. So my mom would make that December for Christmas and Thanksgiving, and it would be a recipe for my family, and I would eat it. But then I would feel so bad because I was like, I can't speak the language though. I can't really connect in and I can't even talk with my peers. So going into that, that further pushed me as well to want to be that representation because I also wanted to show people who are Afro Latina or Afro Latino as well that just because you don't speak Spanish doesn't further take away your culture from you. You are still representing no matter what, and you don't have to speak Spanish to provide that representation and to make a change. So when I did end up running for student member of the board, I remember going up there, I said I wanted to represent all PGCPS students, and most importantly, I wanted to be able to represent both sides of me, my African American side and my Puerto Rican side. And I advocated for change, and I was able to get elected in as the 43rd student member of the board. So I know that was kind of a bit all over the place and kind of throwing in just my experience, but that's really what led me to want to see that change and advocacy.
Wonderful. We have some pictures. Would you like us to pull those up for you?
I would.
Okay.
Yes.
Yay. So
So
walk us through. This is beautiful.
yes. So this picture, the first one in the upper left on my side is in front of the Prince George's Board of Education building. It's right where we have most of our meetings at, and that's actually my SMOB Advisory Council, which I made a big change in minds, making sure that I could have diverse representation from majority of our high schools in PGCPS. So I have students from many different high schools there that are able to work alongside me in achieving my goals as student member of the board. And alongside that, um, the next one on the side is actually my swearing in ceremony. So that's my family all around me. You can see my grandpa actually in the back with his camera up because he was so proud of me that day. And I have my little brother, my mom next to me, and my grandma actually holding the book I took my oath on as well. And the next picture is just me speaking. Actually, those both two last pictures on the end, just speaking and doing student advocacy. And a picture that I'm actually very proud of on the left-hand side, again at the bottom, is the picture I took with my colleagues and actually the former student member of the board, who's the first Latino student member of the board, when we had the ribbon cutting ceremony for our new blueprint school, which is Sonia Sotomayor at Adelphi. And this was a very big, big change for the Prince George's community because it was a new school and it was a beautifully built school for our students. So it was an awesome and amazing experience. And alongside that, it was named after Sonia Sotomayor. And I thought that was just amazing because it was like, this is great representation. And then additionally, another picture in the middle just shows me with a few Prince George's County students getting certificates for our certification in the Maryland State Association of Student Councils. So that's a bit of just what I have done so far in my term.
Wonderful. And, we actually had Alvaro on last year.
Oh, wow. Yes,
Yeah,
Alvaro
yeah.
has been a great inspiration to me. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
I love how you said that until you saw him, elected, that you didn't think it was possible. And I was struck about, how you personally talked about the importance of seeing yourself reflected in books or movies or organizations. So maybe talk a little bit more about that, because you're going to be the next person that some little girl or some little boy sees and thinks, wait a minute, I can do that. So talk a little bit more about why that is so important. We've got this narrative right now going on in the United States about this very thing, but from your perspective, why is that so important?
Right. So I believe that's extremely important because if you don't see yourself representing, it can be so detrimental. It can be extremely detrimental because you don't want to go, for me personally, I didn't want to go into a field where I felt like I wouldn't be heard.
Mm-hmm.
And that tied into even at a younger age, feeling like my voice wouldn't be heard on just any type of student advocacy platform. So I really believe it's important that in movie, whether that's on a big stage in Broadway or it's on a TV screen, or even if it's just on a simple podcast, seeing people who look like you and can represent you so they can really share their stories and eventually inspire younger people. That's why I was so excited to come on here, because I really wanted to share my story about being an Afro-Latina that doesn't speak Spanish and how that personally affected me growing up and affected me in the point where I even felt like I couldn't have my own heritage. So I think it's extremely important that we are representing every single chance we can get, because we're inspiring the next judges, the next lawyers, and the next doctors and nurses, and even other things outside of that, because there's so much more you can do in life. It's extremely important to represent.
Yeah, and if you could unpack just a little bit more about sort of the connection with language and culture, and you what I hear you sort of testifying to is that at first it felt like an impediment, but it seems like your journey is leading you beyond that. So talk to, because I know that there are a lot of young folks that grow up in families where they're not taught the language of the culture of a parent or both parents. And how do we overcome that disconnect? And why do we think that just because we don't speak the language that somehow we don't have a right, or I don't know. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I'll go more back into my early childhood and how it affected me. And really, it was in school settings when I just wanted to connect with students who were in the Latinx community, and especially students who were Puerto Rican as well. It would be really hard because it was like I would come up to them and they'd be speaking Spanish. And then I'd be standing there like, oh no, I know how to say hola. I can say mi nombre es Rain. But then after that, I'm just sitting there like, whoa, what do I say next? And
Yeah.
we also had bachata, a dance team
Mhm.
there as well, and I really wanted to join, but I felt like since I never got a chance to really learn that side of my culture, and again, like I said, just that language barrier, I felt like it would kind of be hard for me to fit in there. And
Mhm.
when I did try to enter settings, it would be kind of like, she's here, yay, she's here again, but now we have to speak English. And I
Mm.
never wanted to make even my peers feel uncomfortable, like they had to switch up just because I was there. And that's really what made it hard for me in my youth at the time. And that I think that's also what caused that larger disconnect as well, because even in conversations where we be talking about our upbringings, um, we a lot of times you'll hear about just the lifestyle growing up in a Latinx household, but for me, since mine's is blended and mixed, but largely on my African American side, I wouldn't be able to connect in those conversations. I could
Mhm.
talk about all the food I had and my family's recipes, but I couldn't talk about really going back to visit my family in Puerto Rico because many of my family members that were there are deceased. So I didn't really get a chance to go back and see them and learn about our culture there and our family's history at all. And I wasn't able to hear the stories of my grandparents and my great grandparents either because they just couldn't share it. So I think that's also what caused that big disconnect for me. And since I didn't have anyone representing as well to say that, hey, you can still connect in your culture regardless of that, I think that's really what turned me away.
So, given all of that, what would you say to your 10-year-old self now that you have this wisdom and this perspective? And what would you say to encourage your 10-year-old Rain?
I would say to Rain at 10 years old that you are a proud Afro Latina. Every day you wake up, that is who you are, no matter what. It's your blood, it's your heritage, and you may not speak Spanish, but you still have that culture and history. You're still representing your ancestors every single day. And with knowing that, I know that I am proud of who I am. I'm proud of my heritage no matter what, and to also tell her that right now your representation, because I know there's other Afro Latinas, and I even know there's other students who are Latinx as well that don't speak Spanish and feel like they can't get in tune or they still can't represent. And that does not mean you cannot do that, because at the end of the day, we're all in this together.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yeah, that's truly beautiful, Rain. I feel like for me, I'm also Latina, and the language barrier is like, you meet other people who speak. So I do speak Spanish, but there's other people who speak Spanish a lot more fluently than me, and then the term no sabo. So sometimes I'm like, oh, am I a no sabo kid? But at the end of the day, it's like I'm still connected with my culture. I put in the effort to learn more about it, and I think you're taking those steps too. So yeah, I'm super proud of you, and it's I can't wait to see all the amazing work that you do on the school board, and once you are out of that stage, as well. So thank you so much.
Well, but before we let Rain go, in our
Mm-hmm.
chat, we have to say, what does Nosavo mean?
Oh
Oh,
yeah,
no.
so no sabo, yeah. So that means I don't know. So but in Spanish, the proper term is no sé. But when you don't know Spanish that well, you say oh no sabo. So that's where it's like a funny term that people like to use on people who are not fluent Spanish speakers.
Got
Yeah.
it.
So that's something growing up. I would be called a no sabo kid at times. And I'd be sitting there like, oh man, no sabo. It would suck, but really, I'm just happy to be where I am now. Like I said, representing, being able to put forth that new generation of change right after Alvaro has left this legacy. I can continue to pick it up and carry it on. And especially now in the student member of the board position, ensuring that we have that diversity, because Prince George's County is largely African American and Latinx. So we have to ensure that we're representing every single student in our county.
There we go. Snapping my fingers. Good. That's beautiful.
All right. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, we are going to have you back. Go ahead, Andrea.
So now we're going to bring Jorge onto the platform. So Jorge Benitez Perez is the lead organizer for CASA in Prince George County. As a lifelong Prince Georgian, Jorge moved to the country from El Salvador at the age of 5, having struggled with being undocumented and then finally aging into the DACA program. Jorge understands the struggle that many undocumented families face in the Prince George County. Through organizing, advocacy, and direct action, Jorge, along with CASA members in Prince George County, have fought for sanctuary, county policies, tenant protection policies, and overall uplifting the struggles of working class families to make systematic changes in the Prince George County. Hi, Jorge. Thank you for being here today.
Hey, thank you guys for having me. And like I said, I appreciate, this conversation. I truly love hearing from Ofelia, from Rain, right? Like that was powerful. And it also shows the diversity, right? The Latinas are here in the United States. We're so complex, right? Like you can't misjudge someone based on how they look and guess where they're from, right? But I also believe, right, in the strength and the power of storytelling. So sharing our stories, right? That is oftentimes a message that I like to share with our CASA members who are working class people, right? Who are oftentimes first generation immigrants coming here to the US and they've struggled back home, right? So I want to start off with what Andrea mentioned in my bio. I was born in El Salvador. I came to the United States when I was 5 years old. And I came directly to Prince George's County. I love this county, right? I've lived here ever since. And it's that growing up, in this county that has made me want to see better, right? Want to see better for the county, makes me want to see changes, right? And that really clicked with me once I graduated high school. I turned 18. Something that's a common struggle with many immigrant youth that were brought here as youth is identity, right? They trying to realize what community you're a part of, where you belong. And when I was 18, right, I really wanted to connect to my culture. It was that moment where I was like, I need to listen to more, Latino music. And I did, right? And boy, was I missing out. Right, I was missing out on a lot of good stuff. But an unfortunate event happened when I turned 19. I was a student at Prince George's Community College. Prince George's, police department at the time had no laws, nothing that protected immigrants. And my mother was turned over to ICE by Prince George's County Police. It was at that moment that I was like, oh no, this has to change. I reached out to legislative, officials. I needed someone to help me in my situation with my mom. And I was referred to CASA. And CASA has been like a life-changing organization for me. CASA has taught me, to find that power, right? Find that strength in who you are and to wear whatever you saw as flaws on your sleeve, right? Wear those flaws proudly and fight back to change your environment. We did that, right? We started a big campaign for Sanctuary Prince George's County. It unanimously passed in our county council. That meant immigrants were going to get the protections they desperately needed. It was a battle for years, right? I know CASA people who came before me were battling this since the early 2000s. And it was something that was being denied every single year. So I can imagine their heartbreak, right, after going every single year and being told no. it was the first year I joined, right? But luckily it passed that year. So it lit up a fire in me, right? To see that this can be done here. What else can we do? I joined the organization as full-time staff, and like I said, it's been a life-changing opportunity for me. We've been able to fight for not just immigration, right? We've been able to fight for education, healthcare, some of the things, right, that I like to go back in CASA history are driver's licenses. Driver's licenses are a thing that were not allowed for undocumented immigrants back in the day, right? And this unfortunately led to the deportation of many innocent immigrants here in our area. And we passed, a law that protected immigrants. They could drive to work, drive to school, drop off their families, their children at school. And that's one of the earliest victories that I can think of. But, I came on board. We started fighting for things like shutting down private ICE detention centers. We got that done in Howard County. We got it done at the state level, right? We passed legislation that would prevent any private ICE contracts here in our state, right? Because what was happening before is that, these beds were being sold. So basically every bed that was full, right, meaning an immigrant was in one of those beds, those local governments were getting money. So they were being incentivized, to go out there and hunt our people down. In education, right, one of the biggest victories that I've seen is the expansion of the Maryland Dream Act, allowing undocumented students the opportunity to go to, basically community college for free, right? That is a big step forward. It is something that also helped me as a DACA recipient look forward to, staying in higher education. But it's something that extremely helps out a lot of youth that, are at that pivotal moment in high school, right? In their senior year, thinking about where to go next. And a lot of counselors, right, sometimes have that hard reality of telling undocumented students, look, I'm not sure, right? Or we can try this. But now the Maryland State, it's called MISFA, and forgive me for not knowing what it stands for, MSFAA, I believe. But it's an opportunity, like I said, that allows students to go to higher education. And most recently, something that we've passed is the Healthy Baby Equity Act. This would allow pregnant, undocumented women, right, or just pregnant folks to go and get healthcare from the moment you know you're pregnant and up to 4 months after delivery. So this is huge. Like, a lot of our folks are dealing with chronic diseases. They're dealing with illnesses. And, the ER is basically where folks go to for their only care. They won't go to a doctor. They won't go to a clinic because it's oftentimes something that's really hard, right, to afford. So you only go when you feel like you just can't stand it anymore. And that's oftentimes where folks end up in the ER. And you'll hear about those ER stories, the long wait times. But this, Maryland is really taking some great steps forward. And like I said, this is being done through the power of folks sharing their stories, right, standing up and finding that power within them because it's rough, right? Like, some of the stories we hear about folks lacking healthcare or really wanting opportunities at education. Our jobs as organizers is to, center folks and remind them that this is why, their stories matter, because it leads to change. It leads to changes in policies for the betterment of our communities.
Yeah, this is beautiful. Jorge, could you have imagined at 13 the impact that you would have?
Absolutely not. I always tell everyone, right? Like, I grew up a super quiet, behind the scenes kid, and this is not something I ever saw myself doing.
Yeah. Have you had have you attended high school reunions yet?
No. I graduated High Point High School in 2017. So we haven't just yet hit like a 10-year or anything.
Yeah. I can't wait. I would love to be a fly on the wall at that reunion. right? Yeah,
No,
you've
I'm
done some.
extremely, like I said, I'm extremely proud of how diverse Prince George's is becoming, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here and share my story.
Yeah, and just the amazing things that you've been able to achieve through CASA and just through your grit and determination. Um, um, you said early on when you first started your presentation, um, after Rain finished, about, and I wrote it down, you can't misjudge someone because of the way they look. That's so important. Can you unpack that a little bit more? Because I think it's critical.
Yes, yes. In our communities, there are a lot of racial biases, like we really got to go back a long, long time ago to really understand this. And it starts with the slave trade, right? Like a lot of African Americans were took were taken to Central and South America, so we are very diverse. Honduras, Panama, they are port right countries, and that's where folks were taken to. And early on, it created that colorist divide in our communities because, like I said, we are very different. We are, those slave masters, but at the same time, we are the slaves at the same time. It's a mixture that's hard to understand. But as Latinas ourselves, right, we really gotta do some digging into that because there are racial, like I said, racial biases that exist in our community, and we have to acknowledge, right, like that we are diverse.
Yeah. When you're saying that, it reminds me of an author event. Christina Parinza Cole, she wrote an amazing book, History, about the mid-Atlantic slave trade. And it really does talk about North America, Central America, South America, and really 1800s. Kyla may very well put that on because it's worth everybody reading, because just what you're saying, Jorge, it talks about that. And unless we understand our history, it makes it harder for us to move forward. And I think what you said is critical, that, I mean, as human beings, we all have biases and things that aren't pleasant, whether we acknowledge it or not. And it's either comes from misinformation or just things that are passed down out of ignorance, or maybe there's something that is based on whether it's appropriate or not is a different conversation. So I really appreciate your transparency and acknowledging that we all have this issue, that we can't say, oh no, that's not what that's not our community. But yeah, so that's wonderful. Andre, do you have questions before we bring this? I just really appreciate all of your work. But yes.
Oh, Jorge, so you talked about how before you came, the law of the sanctuary in Prince George County, that's the law that they were working in the early 2000s, right? So I was wondering, with your job, I know that there's a lot of fighting, right? So what happens? How do you go about pushing forward? Like, how do you keep pushing forward when you're feeling like, oh, like it's not going through, like they're not listening to us? Or because I feel like a lot of people can get discouraged very quickly. So how do you keep pushing forward and not letting that discouragement get to you so that you continue to like make the change that you want to see?
No, that's a great question. Disappointment is real, right? Like a lot of folks can really feel down and disappointed after pushing so hard for something. And it's quite something that we face a lot, right? And I think the best way that we kind of regroup and recenter is by being in community. Like that is where we find our biggest strength, is being united, being one, being together, and just coming back and just analyzing, right, or debriefing about what we did, what happened, right, what we probably could have done different, and how can we come back stronger, right? Like that is oftentimes for us like the hardest or the best part, right, about feeling disappointed, because it's a valid feeling and it's okay to feel disappointed, but we also have to remember, right, to pick back up and not stay down the whole time. But it's a great question. It's just thinking about, a campaign in my head, and I think about nationally, right? Like immigration reform is something that folks have been waiting for since the 80s. And I know there has been people that have been fighting for that for all those years and are still fighting for it now. So if, they haven't gotten tired now, right? I just started. I can't get tired.
Right. Gotcha. Thank you so much, Jorge.
Beautiful
So-
words of encouragement, and again, just reflecting on all of the things that you've talked about that are life-changing, whether it's the driver's license, whether it is, going to community college or shutting down the private ICE facilities. It's just phenomenal. So thank you. We celebrate everything that you've done. So thank you. Yeah. I guess, Andrea, should we bring everyone back on? Because I do have more questions.
So we'll have everyone come back on to the platform.
Thank you so much, Jorge. Hey.
Thank you, guys. So now we'll just have like a round table discussion. So I think with like one of the first questions we can start off, and we could just take turns as we go. But what do you see as the most pressing issues facing the Latin community in the county as of right now? So anyone can go.
Everybody's waiting for the other person.
No, I know how to make a list. It's a lot. I don't know.
I'll honestly start with something I've been seeing, right? Like our headquarters are located in Langley Park. So honestly, I'll say in the county, diversity and leadership. We have a lot of ESL students here in Langley Park that have honestly been struggling with just feeling motivated to go to school because there's been, either bullying or those, misunderstandings, right, of understanding who we are as our different cultures. So these students are oftentimes being bullied for the language they speak, physically, right, aggravated. And I think that comes from the lack of representation, because if we had a voice at the table, right, if we had that critical voice at the table, I know that would be addressed. And it's lacking right now.
Can I go next?
Yeah.
Okay. So being on the school board and being a student in our school systems, what I often see is kind of like what Jorge said. Our Latinx community is often not represented, especially in our student government. I would say that is the biggest place where our English language learning students are often not at the table there. And you just don't see that representation at all, even in our SGAs at local schools. So it's really just for us there in our school system trying to get that representation and advocacy there.
And all comes, I think I so agree with Diane and Jorge, because it's like it all comes with empowerment also, like that we can like go and be that representation, right? Because sometimes we feel like, no, if we're not represented, it's because I don't know, something is missing. But no, that we're enough and that we have to fight for it, right? That empowerment, I feel that it's so important, right? To not devalidate ourselves, right? So yes, of course, and I agree with you.
Thank you. And I think we had a question from the audience. Do we want to pass that question now? All right. So, Rain, this is a question for you.
So I'll read it for those maybe. I'll read it for those maybe who are tuning in on the phone. The question is, what has been the most memorable experience as a student board member?
This This question is a bit hard for me because I've had so many amazing experiences. If I could choose one, I I think it will be the day I got sworn in. Because for me that was that starting point of change and really breaking that box that I had been put in my entire life and being able to finally have that seat at the table that I had been fighting for so long. So I think that was my most memorable moment, just stepping into this role. If I could say advocacy wise, the next step for me with advocacy, my biggest memorable moment was when I had an opportunity to just campaign and go visit schools and to have one-on-one conversations with the students and see exactly how they feel about our school system and what's affecting them. That really opened my eyes and changed my perspective just about my own experience in our school system and what needed to change.
That's good. I actually do have a question for Ofelia. So you've got quite an influence and following on Instagram. So what tips do you have for people to get connected to their artistic communities? Like, how does one build up the following and how do we get connected?
Yeah, I don't feel I have that many followers, but I feel like because some of my friends they have like 40,000, 50,000, so I feel like a very like small percentage. I don't know, like I think one of the important things is to connect because sometimes I don't know, social media is it's fake, right? Not like everyone is posting whatever they want other people to no. So it's not real and something that we should, I mean, I hope everyone knows that, right? That is not real. And and sometimes, like it's a good tool to approach someone, but and to make community, but sometimes it's better to do community with than in real life somehow. And sometimes it's difficult and sometimes it's hard to do that, but but for me it would be to connect, to engage, and not only think it's like, oh, pay attention to me, but actually to be like a two-way street. And for social media and for everything in life, right? Like if you're gonna be in community, you have to be in community. You cannot just some want people to do something for yourself. You have to ask, engage, and support other people. Share their things and everything.
Yeah, no, that's great. And Jorge, you talked about the great question that Andrea asked you about sort of disappointment and how you overcome. But what is another, or maybe the biggest challenge that you face in community organization, and how do you overcome it? Because I think community organization is critical.
Yes, a lot of the biggest struggle is fear. Fear in itself, right? Like I'm scared to, speak out against this issue. I'm scared to share. I'm scared to be vulnerable more than anything, right? That is oftentimes the biggest challenge, and facing that oftentimes, we face that through being vulnerable ourselves, right? Sharing stories of how we overcame a moment when we were super scared or super afraid to do something.
Yeah, that's so important. That's such a life lesson for all of us, to be vulnerable and to be open. Yeah. Kyla, and I'm sure Andrea has questions, but before she asks, because we are almost out of time, is there another question maybe from the community? Okay, so no more at this point. Before I close, Andrea, did you have a question for the group? Or?
Yeah, so one last question. So I feel like the work that you all are doing is so amazing. So where do you plan on going? What further step do you all plan on going? And like where, or like your career, where do you see that going? Or where do you hope to be in a year, 2 years? And then I'll start with Rain. So Rain, you can start.
Okay. So in a year or 2 years, I'll be honest, I'll be in college. So I want to actually talk about my life plans beyond that and really what my goals are. So after college, undergrad, I do want to attend law school. And eventually, I want to do law for a few years. I actually want to do immigration law, to be exact. And that's because of growing up in Prince George's County, which inspired me to really want to get into that form of law because we don't have many immigration lawyers. And often it's just a lot of corruption that goes into that process. And I want to be the change in that. So, with me wanting to go into that law, I plan to do it for a few years. And after that, as I said, I really enjoy student government and advocacy. So, I want to be a congresswoman. And that's really just to be that representation that I said I wanted for so long at a young age, and to be the Afro Latina in history books that other people can look up to one day.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And then we'll go with Jorge.
Yeah, so organizing is interesting. Right now I lead a team of 4 organizers, right? And I love, just sitting down with them and going over strategies, and I just love strategizing, right, on next steps, on campaign building. So in the future, I'd love to continue, doing this at a larger scale, right? Hopefully nationally, doing national work.
Can't wait to see that, honestly. And then Ofelia.
First, I want to say, Rainy, come to UMD, University of Maryland, and we're right here. Sorry, I was just, I mean, you can go wherever you want, and I'm sure you're going to do amazing things. So it was happy. I was clapping, but I was muted. That's amazing. And what was the question? Oh, yes. How do I see myself? I was distracted. I'm sorry. But yes, of course, I want to polish my books, but related to the community, I want us to have a solid, network of writers, Latinx writer, not only in the DMV area, but across the board, like not only in the United States, in other countries, and that we push publishing so we can be still, like get representation, what we've been talking about it, get represented in books and storytelling. So in any storytelling that we can approach, because the small percentage of Latinos represented in publishing is so scary. I don't have the numbers with me right now, but it's really scary. So it has nothing to do with how many we are, like in the country, with what is actually, the percentage of books published by Latino authors. So yes, gracias.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
that is very thought-provoking. Yeah, thank you all 3 for your amazing contribution and your words of wisdom, and really giving us a lot to think about. So I loved looking through each of your lenses to get a peek of the greatness. So thank you for celebrating your achievements with us. And unfortunately, we are out of time. Again, to our panelists, thank you all so much for the time you spent with us today, for all of the work that you do in our communities, making Prince George's County an awesome place to live, work, and play. And thank you to everyone who tuned in. We do what we do for you, and we are so glad that you took some time out of your evening to join us in celebrating Latino Achievement. We are all made so rich by the incredible contributions of people like our guests this evening, and by people like you. And we, the Office of Human Rights, are here to keep working on enhancing quality of life for all Prince Georgians. Sorry, it's been a long day. From bringing you programming like this one and educating on social justice, to conducting robust investigations and complaints of civil rights, discrimination at work, in housing and public accommodations, in education, in law enforcement, and more, to combating human trafficking around the region, and to ensuring that the county government services are equitably accessible to all people in the language of their preference. We invite you to learn more about us and to see some of our upcoming events at civilrights.mypgc.us, right there on the screen. And if you'd like to get in touch with us, please reach out to us directly through email at ohrstaff@co.pg.md.us. And again, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Jorge. Thank you, Rain. Thank you, Ofelia. And thank you everyone for joining us. Have a wonderful evening. And don't leave us who are here on screen. So